So thank you for the invitation. I would love to thank Nada for the introduction, Omar for hosting the talk of the night, Walid, as a good friend, for introducing me to the IDS program, and Peter, who is also here, for making, the communication and supporting this trip and the possibility to speak in front of experts. I would also love to thank Leslie. She cannot be here today. We wish her all the best for the exhibition in Seoul, Korea. Basically, when we talk about, or me especially talking about public space and private space, I have to introduce places and people. Without people, the places would be meaningless. And so most of the things I'm introducing are maybe not familiar to you, except those names I mentioned before, but all the other maybe are not familiar, but also interesting to know what these people are doing. If there are questions, you may wait till the very end or just throw it at me and I try to answer immediately, because I think it's also a question of connecting things to understand what we are looking at. First of all, I would like to make a small journey, starting actually with a picture taken here, not very far from here, at Wall Street. This picture resembles a physical act and representation of a demonstration during Occupy movement. At the same time, the protest is dedicated or is initiated by the fact that money as information is circulating in a very fast speed, and it's also outside our visual representation. We cannot see how fast this money is traded, and that's also part, it has a lot of effect to the worldwide economy, and it has political and social components in it. So at the same time, you see Occupy as a movement, and you see individual, very individual announcements made under this umbrella of Occupy. I personally joined Occupy Helsinki in Finland with a group of 25 students. We collaborated with them as they had no idea, beside the political demonstration and protest they had on mind, how to give that kind of an aesthetic dimension. Aesthetic is a way to communicate between subjects and people, individuals. So you have to have some material at hand to communicate, whatever, let's say, the subject or issue is. This is a picture taken in 2013 during the first riots in Istanbul, in Turkey. The problem here is that we have only sources which may have left Turkey without permission. So we look on a very kind of difficult situation right now. It even gets worse in the last 5 years. So the Erdogan reign has empowered themselves by a kind of a legacy of presidency with many rights than in the time we were looking at. Police attacking people who were gathering to protest against something which you may are kind of used to. They were about to gentrify a park into a condominium area, and it was very much meant to be luxury apartments. So people were kind of protesting to maintain the park as a recreation part of the city, and also to maintain a place which is not part of real estate management and real estate capitalistic use. This guy is from the protest in Istanbul, Gürgen. He was protesting without shouting. He was not putting a sign up. He was joined silently in front of the media building at Taksim Square. And he made it up to German weekly magazines such as The Spiegel to kind of resample the idea that it is not enough to be on Facebook or any other social media and just to click, I accept or I agree or I like, but to show up in public space and reclaim this space with our physical body. Just in brackets, because we are in the United States, artists like Bruce Nauman kind of resemble this idea that, the body consciousness is a very important topic, not only in the art world, but also in social communication. It's easier to control people by social media than to kind of influence them if they show up in public space. So this kind of regaining, maybe you can say that's a backlash to the 60s demonstration. I've seen some demonstration while I'm here in the US. And I have a kind of vibration looking at people occupying the street. This is a sign of a person before the election. And what seems to be a threat is a reality now. This is a picture taken by the artist Wolfgang Tillmans. You may know him. He's a German photographer who lives also in England. And he took this picture in 1992, and it resembles two things. It says, you know, the artist chose that motive because this is a typical, let's say, person who looks like a dropout, maybe drunk or whatever is the reason why he's laying down. But most also maybe takes your curiosity is that these structures here are made to maintain a space between the consumption area of shops and the windows and the public space. So as close as the person could get is not to lay on these stones. Sometimes you find even 2 rows to provide a bigger space. And this is a tendency, maybe a detail, but it's a tendency you can observe what people are doing, you know, to keep the public space as a space for consumption and for, you know, to sell rather than to offer space for everyone. So it's a very anti-democratic and anti-social movement there. And there's an industry behind this. There are laws, there are lawyers to fight these laws on behalf of these shop owners. And this is a documentation from a gathering in Paris. This happened after the Charlie Hebdo assassination in Paris a year and a half ago. And people were reclaiming, like in the 1960s when the French student revolution happened, as had happened in Berkeley at the same time, and also a year later in Germany, reoccupying the space. And it's about debate, it's about discussion, it's about exchange of ideas. There's a big difference if you put 5 people in a room and they see each other and communicate, or having 5 people behind screens. So the temperature you share, the atmosphere, the aura is maybe different to convey through a kind of a flat screenish environment. So that's why they gather. They did it for almost a year, you know, despite the weather. This is US, easy to see, New York. And this is a picture I found because it is a protest of sanitation people. As you know, this quote, "I'm a man, I'm a person, I'm an individual, I have rights," goes back to the 1967 riots in different cities in the US. And I think there are 2 things interesting. One is the phrase itself. It's very minimalistic in a way, and at the same time, the repetition of the appearance of the poster. If you have certain interest in kind of protest design, I would call it, I would like to draw your interest to Sister Corita. Sister Corita was part of the Berkeley uprising in the 1967. All the designs she did for this public protest and the children books has a lot of kind of connotation to the, let's say, status quo of art in that time. A lot of the quality, one would say, is an Andy Warhol-ish kind of level she reached there. This is a typical moment where the East German people were protesting against the rules. They were not allowed to travel. They had a lot of restrictions to face during the communist time. And as you know, in 1989, the wall came down and there was a process of reunification which has been completed by October 1990. I will get back to this issue a little bit later. Why I'm showing this is also in the sense of reintroducing the body into public space is there, at least in Germany, I don't know about the situation in the US so far, but in Germany there's a law, as a civil person, I have the right to organize a protest. If I do so, it's absolutely for free. and the police has to protect this demonstration against violators or against traffic. They have to organize it. This is the Hamburg Kunsthalle, and you see here the Black Cube by Gregor Schneider. That was an art piece he suggested in 2003 for the Venice Biennale, for the Piazza San Marco. It was refused, as it could also be taken as a, as the cube of Mecca, the Kaaba. So they were kind of afraid to put this up during that time, and so he found another occasion to set it up. It was actually an exhibition about Kazimir Malevich's Black Square, either to commemorate, but also to think about it, and also to kind of refresh the idea what was the reason the Russian constructivists was kind of interested in taking over the, let's say, daily life. So I organized the Black Square as a public demonstration. One little announcement in the newspaper asking people to be dressed white or black. If you're black, you have to go to the middle. If you're white, you be part of the frame. If I would have organized it as a performance, I had to pay $15,000 for the protection of the traffic. If I do it as a civil person, as I said, it's part of my right. I have to make sure that there is a claim. It says public square. Every gesture in the city is political. You have to print a little pamphlet where you kind of convey the idea. The rule is that people who are looking at the demonstration get a clue what's all about. I cannot improve that if they got it while people are walking as a black square through a city. But the interesting part is when I approached the police in Hamburg, they were kind of inviting me to organize demonstrations. They were kind of ready to do that. I think because they were facing the lack of interest of people organizing this kind of demonstration. And that's maybe surprising, because Hamburg was known for kettling people 24 hours without food or any kind of sanitation, because they were protesting against nuclear power. It's the same city. If you look close, the people surround are the police people with white helmet. And inside, the protesters were dressed all black. So I was surprised this officer didn't get it, that there was something happening before. Here's another picture, how it looks. So the invitation was maybe taken just because of the lack of interest, but there was a kind of a notion in the history of the city, which I found interesting. And then during that time, Boris Groys, he was my colleague in Karlsruhe, then he moved to NYU. He was publishing this book at MIT Press, Art Power, and he took the maquette of what I made for the poster to tell the police what I was going to do, and also I was giving a black and white big poster version for free for everyone who was participating in this event. I know that this term participation maybe is too strong for what the people did, basically, but I also have to tell you that some people appeared dressed in a red t-shirt saying this is the new black. There were other people who was extremely slow walking. So starting from a square, we became slowly but constantly a long, extended rectangle. And because we are not it was not meant to be a communist march, everyone was free the way they wanted to move or act. Some people were singing. It was completely under the control of the people participating in this event or performance. I reenacted it 4 days before in front of a very important election in the city of Thessaloniki, which is Greece. And it was interesting to see how different this works. The people were joining, and they were telling them each other that they never ever joined a demonstration. For me, Greece is, let's say, the kind of a role model if it comes to democracy, protest, all the terms we have about it has a Greece connotation, but the Greece population has nothing to do with it. So it all goes back to Agora 2,500 years before Christ. It's 500 years before Christ. It's a completely different concept. So when they were gathering in the center of Aristoteles Square for let's say 95% of those people, it was the first time appearing in public space, not being a consumer, but being part of something which they would consider is productive. It has a moment of protest towards the government. I don't want to go into details why this election was important, but just to let you know, it was about European Union was about to send Greece off because of the debts they have. It's like 140 billion. So there was a strong, let's say, pressure on the people and on the government itself. Okay, I tried to introduce some works I'm doing, which are kind of encouraging different notions. First of all, I'm not the artist being invited. Most of the time, I encourage myself and initiate projects, so I'm calling people, knocking on people's doors and say, look, I have this idea, would you like to participate or join this idea? In this case, I was looking at a building in Düsseldorf, the city where I live, and while I was looking at it, I had the idea to change the appearance of the building, but only using all the sources at hand. Number one, 700 people working in that building from one company. It's a steel production company in that time. The architecture, which is Paul Schneider-Esleben. For those who are interested in contemporary music, he is the father of Florian Schneider, one of the founder of Kraftwerk. So contemporary music, contemporary architecture. This building was erected at, it's a very small high-rise building, but in 1955 it was one of those tallest ones in that environment, and it was established and completed by 1955. I gave information to all the, actually I spoke to almost every employee in that building. It took me 2.5 years. And it was only possible because I lived very close, so I could go there by bicycle and go floor by floor. The problem is that you have a fluctuation in, by the employees, people are coming and leaving, then the problem is we are looking at different things. These are offices which are going around the building. These are women toilet, man toilet, and these are for the elevators, like the rooms in front of the elevator. So I had to find extra people, attention, or let's say, agreement to also maintain this space. So this is the second week. I proposed to change the sign to the city only once a week. So it started to be there the whole night, and the next morning people came, so it was kind of destructed, and then it happened to be again in the night. So the people I was addressing were people in a car, 250,000 people passing by in the morning, and same amount of people in the evening. And we made no information, no press, no nothing. And the first thing appeared in the German press was the cleaning women forgot to switch off the lights. Very interesting, because at least someone have seen a difference. Okay, that's important. But this was not the message. Anyhow, I don't know if there was a message, but this was the third week. I just flipped through 4, 5, and 6. Okay. I can show off my passion to Stanley Kubrick's 2001, Space Odyssey, where the thing comes into play, where the primates are confronted with the thing, and in the final section of the film you find it again. And also you have to understand, let's say, the connotation or the contextualization of the building. So it's in the middle of the cityscape, it's next to the river, which is really dark in here. And this is the street which passed all the way, so this was responsible for the traffic. But then the surprising thing happened after 6 weeks. People were writing letters to the CEO. We have seen signs on the building. Weeks after. The same randomly appearing and disappearing structure and pattern. But through the 6 weeks of conducting or kind of choreographing, let's say the appearance from the inside through the architecture to the outside, the message has been delivered. It's about sensitivity, it's about to try to understand, to enigma what kind of signs are out there and to have a relation to it. It starts actually with the people when they left the building. They turned around and looked how their office, small office, maybe 3 windows, 10 windows, whatever, had been kind of made it up to a bigger sign. I think this is something I found interesting. And I have to admit that when I did this from 87 to 1990, I was doing that before because I was interested in this kind of transformation. And then the CEO asked me to send a bill. I was surprised because I was not prepared to send a bill because I was interested to do that project. And then I realized one could just try to make projects which are ephemeral and you get paid for it like a performer. And that was the first time I could send in a bill. And it was paid. Okay, this is something Walid, Raad, and I are kind of connected with. A very small town close by Cologne, on the Rhineland area. And this is one of the very, very few remaining synagogues in that area. This is one of the bigger ones in Hanover, which is in Lower Saxony. And this has been destroyed through the pogrom in November 1938, through the Nazi regime, when the anti-Jewish and genocide started. No one can say we didn't know about it, but that's another story. So just to let you know, this was massive. It was in the center of the daily life, and it had been set on fire. Synagogues, shops, people had been taken to concentration camps. There's no doubt about it. Excuse me? Yeah, Kristallnacht. Yes, exactly. That's how we know it, because the windows had been smashed, and there is a composition by John Zorn who used it exactly that title, Kristallnacht. In that moment, a small little synagogue, very much in a remote area outside the big cities, had survived simply because before this Kristallnacht happened in November 8 and 9, 1938, the community already, Jewish community already escaped from that situation. They had kind of sensed there is no future for them. Most of those people from this little village moved to Tel Aviv. I know that because through the project, we were in contact. It happened to be that this place was covered, the David Star was covered by, to hide the place, and the place was used just as a storage room. So that was the reason it was not destroyed. Afterwards, people were thinking what to do with it. We have a Torah shrine and there's no Torah, and there's no Jewish community. Why you have a Bet Knesset? Why you have a synagogue? They started this arts program to kind of do maybe two things. To offer that space, to kind of think about it as a kind of a think tank situation. At the same time, they wanted to find out if there is a possibility to talk to artists, if they could do something site-specifically and dedicated to that history of that place, and maybe also give some notion what can be done with the space in the future. I mean, in terms of how would it kind of engage people to think about what is the future of a community, how we can live together. And the first artist who took that mission was in 91 was Yannis Kounelis. At that time, he was teaching at the Art Academy in Düsseldorf. The second artist was the American artist Richard Serra. And the third artist was, the first German artist was Georg Baselitz. I'm sure you are familiar with most of the names, aren't you?
When did Gail join?
Excuse me, where?
When did Gail join? 91?
91? Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't get
The three people you mentioned.
Yes.
They started in 1991.
Yes.
The German came in 91, or did they figure out
No.
something and he came later?
No, it was, every artist was every year. So it was 91, Kounelis, and the second one was Richard Serra, 92, and 93 it was Georg Baselitz. I could maybe do something while I'm talking about it and hand over this publication, would you? This is about the project till 2000, yes. So when the German artist Georg Baselitz was asked to do a piece there, he showed the fragment of a wooden leg. And the interesting part of it was that he had shown it 3 different versions in 3 different places. When he was asked by the media why he was doing that, he responded saying, because the two other famous artists had taken on this mission at the synagogue. It's called Project Synagogue Stommel, as the publication says. So that was also raising questions. And that was the moment I was writing a letter to the organizers. The organizer is Angelika Schallenberg. She's still in mission. She still works for the project, and she's still inviting artists and help them to realize work which is commissioned only for this place. And the second person is Gerhard Dornseifer, who passed away in 2001. So they initiated the project, and Angelika is still in mission. And the idea is that the artists come and visit. It's not a JPEG curating. It's not, you're not looking online. You go there, you meet the people, and you have to see the dimension, the scale. You have to see what the neighborhood is like to get a picture. You have to understand why this synagogue is not in the front street. It's in the backyard. What does it mean to the community? What was the value of that kind of building, and what was the relation between all those people living around, surrounded it? And maybe have seen when the Jewish community has left, even though it was reported that some of them had been deported because they didn't leave the community before Kristallnacht. So we have a kind of an ambiguity inside the community. What is my relation? I mean, even for those who are living there, it's not about us to judge. It's about us to observe, to understand the complexity. So the idea I proposed was to lock the synagogue, this is the door, and put lights into the synagogue. So when people were trying to enter from this little pathway, they were blinded by the light. In the next moment they wanted to enter, they were excluded, and they were kind of put into limelight in front of the locked building. These are the views from the neighbors, and you could see there were strong lights. It was not about to have the strongest light possible. It was about to create a connection between the physical presence of the building, the historical, let's say, weight in it, and also the connection to the question, what are the relationship of the neighbors? It's a kind of a complex situation. When it was done, I mean, I was writing a letter, and they accepted the project, and we did it. But at the same time, it was the peak of anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi movement in Germany. Between 1992, they set asylum homes on fire. They were attacking Turkish families. They were attacking Semitic cemeteries and people in the street and other synagogues which had been reestablished. So there was a kind of a very difficult time. So the people who are living there, staying with a project where 24 hours a day the synagogue is lit up and people are going there, is maybe dangerous to them. So I left the decision to the neighbors either to collaborate on this project or maybe deny it. And they accepted it. They said, we are fine. We can organize that this is going to happen and nothing is going to be destroyed. There's no fire, there's no smashed windows, whatever. And they were right. I mentioned before the fact that in 1989 the wall came down with the political changes in Europe, but also in especially between East and West Germany. And every year they ask people to join a kind of a celebration in the city of Leipzig, which is one of those cities where this rivalry demonstration started. People were joining the street, and the police were observing the situation. And that particular day, the 8th of October 1989, the police from Leipzig was calling the headquarters in Berlin and asking if they should shoot or not, as they realized that people are not just gathering but doing a demonstration march. And the order was not to shoot. That's why we know it's a peaceful revolution. And I created a basin, maybe like a hockey field, ice hockey field in size. I put fog machines in, and I created a sculpture only for 4 hours, which was a moment where people could gather. In total, 250,000 people in that time, because part of this memory is that the people are reenacting the march. When it was happening in '89, it was 60,000 people, but now it's 250,000 people coming every year to kind of moderate this very special moment in time. I don't know if Peter ever attended that, because you did. So you know how emotional it is and very difficult to capture. One thing I have to mention is when they redo it as a march, every, let's say, a commercial sign is switched off. So you don't see any kind of the Macy's or any kind of big announcements out there. Everything is in the dark, so it's really kept a very spooky and concentrated atmosphere. It's very moving to be part of it. And I was doing this white space because I realized that it's very difficult for those who had not been born in '89, also being part of this, the new kind of history, what is their relation? And I realized when I open kind of a stage situation, a basin where people can throw their memories or expectations or whatever thoughts, ideas into that basin, it is a kind of a more inviting and providing space rather than to kind of make a political statement in a way that I talk about my position to this reunification or not. So it's a very public notion in this work. I don't know what happened, why people were spending time there, because if you look in there, you just see the smog going up, and we manipulated the smog, so it was a little bit more heavier than usually to create the structures, because Leipzig is a very windy city. And no one was jumping in, nothing was thrown in. It was a complete respected area, which is not maybe the common experience you have if you work in public space. A lot of people try to not vandalize, but let's say extend the material resistance. They try to find out how much they can do with it, or climbing up on things. Nothing of this kind of stuff happened there. Okay. This is a public work existing only for 5 days. I was invited to the city of Katowice, which is in south of Poland. You may know or not, but this has a very strong industrial notion. There's coal mining in the middle of the city. There's a lot of heavy metal industry there. And coal mining is coming to an end. So the city is also under a kind of reconstruction. And I was invited to do a public work. And I was surprised. I had a kind of a carte blanche. And I was observing what is happening in the city, and I found out a lot of people are using a class, kind of a tramway for transportation, from home to work, from work to home. I asked if I could get a streetcar. I painted it white. I put some frost foil, how do you call that? Frosty foil kind of thing, to cover the window. I found a person to drive it. It was Olga. And she is sitting in the front. And what was her mission? She started on Thursday to drive randomly through the city and also connecting to other cities. Then Friday was free, and then she had Saturday and Sunday, Monday free, Tuesday and Wednesday, full stop. When she left this tram depot, she was completely on her own. She was kind of incorporating the idea that she's not communicating to people. So this car was trying to stop her because people were knocking on the door because they asked for explanation. And the interesting thing is, it was like a light sculpture moving around randomly. There was no press notion before. There was no information again. Kind of an unprepared or audience for an unpredictable intervention in public space. My assistant, Claudia, she's from Poland. After a while, she was collecting emails from the mayor of the city. And the mayor received emails saying, my grandmother was sitting in the streetcar. First thought was, Olga. No, it's not Olga. She had no children, no family, actually. And we found out that the people were thinking that their beloved ones had been sitting in the streetcar, because Katowice is only 60 kilometers away from Auschwitz. So, again, because Auschwitz, the two concentration death camps, were heavily kind of founded on transportation. So even this light streetcar moving through the city could not be taken, whatever, as a light art piece or whatever, or the intervention by an artist, but it was taken completely from, at least for those who had been sending the emails to the mayor, that it is connected to Auschwitz. You have to know that the city is called Auschwitz. That's the Polish name. If you say in Poland Auschwitz, you mean the death camps by the Nazis. If you say Auschwitz, then it's the city. So they make a distinction also by naming it, because this name, Auschwitz, was introduced by the German aggressors. So again, this was an experience. I have to say it was not intended to be connected to Auschwitz. I have to say that. But as I said, I do something and then the things are starting and develop their own, let's say, approach or own dimension. And we have to deal with it afterwards. We had, Claudio at least was responding to two people because they really were expressing their concerns. And we have to take a serious look at these kind of reactions, because those who are not saying something, you cannot reflect to. You have a more kind of global or general sense if people kind of take in or take not in the intervention. I've seen a lot of people having fun with it, kind of stopping the streetcar or trying to get in contact with Olga or whatever, doing a lot of footage, putting it out on some social media, but these are not the ones you are getting in contact with. But those who are really sitting down and writing letters or at least emails are those ones you want to respond to. I have to say that also Santiago Sierra, an artist I think you are familiar with, was invited to come to Katowice, and he chose to continue his idea of global no. He was using a truck driving through the region with a global no. That was a continuation of a project he started, I think, a couple of years ago. I mentioned my little bit obsession about interacting and involving people in public space, and I took some credit from the so-called Speaker's Corner, which is meant to be a place in London, Hyde Park, where you are encouraged, allowed to say what you want, except you don't have to touch ground. That's why people are standing up there on letterboxes. And you see that's, this person is try to convey something, and as other people do. And it's very funny because it's London, and London is known for a massive number of CCTV cameras, surveillance cameras. So you have 3 million cameras. Every notion, everything you do in the city is recorded. At the same time, there's this dedicated spot where you should maybe do what you want. I found this quite contradictory and paradox in a way. But though I was transforming that to a city where I was invited to do a public intervention. But they thought I do something with the building, put some lights on or make it look nicer, different, whatever. It's a small castle in East Germany. It's called Halle, is the name of the city. It has an extremely well-known collection of Lux Feininger and Lionel Feininger. Both artists being connected to the Bauhaus, which is running into the centennial anniversary next year. And they were interested to give the museum more, let's say, appeal to the public. They have a lack of visitors. I mean, only specialists may go there. So my idea was to put a stage in front of the museum, on the public side, on the pedestrian area, outside the museum. And the problem was that when we were doing this, they were facing a lot of neo-Nazi activities in that city. So they were afraid that people are going to step on that stage, lift the right arm and do some aggressive messages from the stage into the public, which has also been taken on camera, on a webcam. So this place was connected with the internet in 2000, and at the same time, we had to write a contract saying everything which is happening on the stage has to be conform with the civil rights of Germany. I never did that before. So it was a very special situation between trusting and kind of being suspicious from the museum towards the artist to the city. But we realized the project. This guy is protesting in front of, actually he's protesting against my work on stage. He used that stage to protest against the stage. And, well, why not? The accusation was, I'm coming from Western Germany, why I'm telling people what to do or not to do in East Germany. In 2000, the situation was not as maybe today, so it was still kind of a tendency to observe each other, how we move together or live together or maybe not. There were a lot of people coming from West Germany to East Germany to tell people how to do tax and how to do business and how to do this and that, how to educate. And I understood this hesitation. I understood this tendency of being suspicious towards me as an artist. And when he was doing that, he also maybe has organized how the paper, he was silently reading, for instance, Richard Sennett. And then he tore the pages out and let the wind distribute it. So the way he recollected it, he may have chosen that particular street sanitation car to get it done. We both teamed up in a panel discussion. I was kind of offended, but at the same time, I was kind of fascinated that he was kind of insistingly working against me. Press people, curators, he was informing a lot of people. Also, it gave some interest to the work, but also it was an invitation to start a debate. And what I have to tell you is, this maybe, even though it is a protest, it is some good news, but there are also some bad news I have to show you. I have to come down here. Could you volunteer? Just hold the mic. I'm sorry. Thank you. The problem is, this mic. Can you understand me like this? Okay, then I just relax. Okay, the problem is that we wanted to document what happened on the stage. Okay, I'm talking, is the relation between the museum and me as an individual artist. Oh yes, thank you, Omar. So the problem here is that the museum has expectation how a catalog should look like. And myself, I also have some ideas how it should look like. So basically, when we recorded the activity, this stage existed for 2 weeks. So what we did is we made a kind of a pictorial documentation, like a family book. I will tour this book, and you see that has been some tours behind it. So we did a black and white documentation, okay? When we proposed it to the museum, they disliked it because we said, if there is nothing to document, it is a documented non-activity on the stage. You understand that is a big difference. It's not nothing happening, but it's nothing documented happening. Because people made a decision not to climb the stage, not to make a statement, not to make an action. Why I'm saying that? After 12 years Nazi reign between 1933 and 1945, and another 40 years of communist reign, people had a different approach to what is public space, how to speak out. How could you, without being arrested or being observed by a neighbor, or someone has giving a hint to someone and you get a fine, or you get treated by the police or whatever. So I totally understood that this could happen. Nothing is happening on the stage, and this is a documented non-activity. And the museum said, we're not going to pay for black pages. We don't have budget for this. So what I found, extra money, private misanthropic money, so we could do the catalog. Yeah, sometimes it is, we start as partners and we finished as not enemies, but I would say we didn't share the same opinion. So I give you a small introduction about that. And to give you a little impression of what we did, I need a volunteer. Can I ask you? What's your name? Yes. Luis? Can you team up for a moment? Okay, thank you. Okay, what is this? What is the stage? The stage is it's a lifted situation in front of people. I would love you to encourage to stand up here. It should hold you. Okay, then I ensured lights to make you visible. And here's your mic, and you can say everything you want. Because you are not standing on American ground. Welcome.
Hello? I'm on the stage.
You're on stage, yes.
I'm not on the floor. That's all I have to say. I like it.
You are exposed, aren't you?
I am.
Okay.
Hello?
You want to get someone else on the stage?
Yeah, we should try that.
Okay. Thank you, Luis, for the moment. Give him a hand. Thank you. I wonder, there's so much to say about Cooper Union. So much to say about the US. Who wants to climb up the stage now? I want to say something. Feel free, come on. Brave boys and girls here. Oh my God. Who? Come on, get down here. What's your name? Celine? Sydney. Oh, good. This is my next destination. That's true. I'm going back home and then I'm going to Sydney. So welcome, Sydney. Thank you. Should work. You're not trusting this milk trays, aren't you?
No, it's a milk carton.
Okay. So now is your time.
Everyone should go to the Cooper Union Black Student Union show tomorrow. That's what I want to say, to support the black students. It's going to be in 41 Cooper Square, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. tomorrow, March 20th. Yeah. And every other day of the year, support black students at Cooper Union.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sydney. It's so simple, isn't it? You need so less to kind of encourage public. I have the freedom to use the whole space by myself. What a waste, maybe. Okay, we will see. Okay. Oh, here, I forgot to mention. This is a very interesting fellow. Marcel Brotas, the Belgian artist, you may know. He had a big show at the MoMA last year. You may have seen it. Fantastic what he developed, the idea of the Museum of the Eagle. Anyway, he was also living in Düsseldorf, and he was also showing, he did a piece for William Blake at the Speaker's Corner in London. But he was pleading for, can you read that in the back rows? Silence. It says silence. So either, a little bit what Louis did, to use that moment of exposure and not saying much, is something which also happened on the stage in Halle. And I think it's not about what you do, but it's about the status of mind you're doing it. So that's important. And Sydney had a clear statement to make, and I think there are many other thoughts out here worth being presented through this kind of format. But I also understand it's performing, it's kind of exposure, it's a little bit of voyeuristic components in it you don't want to deal with, but there may be moments in time, and I think Cooper is at this point where you cannot just hide your feelings, you have to act. Things are not getting better because you think someone should make it better. It's you making Cooper what it used to be. A place for those who are welcome, despite all the other facts of social level and financial backup and background. And I've read a few things today, and I know that Walid has a very clear statement to make. Now, make the change now. Back to full attainment. So I keep my fingers crossed it's going to work out for you. This goes to you. This is your applause for yourself. Yes. Okay. Most of the projects I'm doing, I had been introducing, had two notions. Number one, I was the initiator. I was writing a letter, calling people, approaching people to do something. Most of them. And the other notion is it was involving, let's say, works which are just shown in a very short time, from 4 hours maybe to 6 weeks. I have to say, if you work on that time pace, then you can do things in a more different way, more radical, because it's ephemeral, it's time-based, it's limited. But if you work on a legacy or you work on a permanent situation, because the situation requires a different statement, if you get involved, if at all, then I would say Solidarity Grid is this project to be mentioned. After the two major earthquakes in 2010 in September and February 2011 in Christchurch, which is the hub for the Antarctic missions in the Antarctica on the southern island of New Zealand, I became known and acquainted with the situation. A friend of mine was invited as a curator for a public art program. It's called Scape, if you look it up. And we had, after the earthquakes, was a kind of a devastated situation. People were thinking leaving the spot. 250,000 people are living there. 50,000 immediately left the city. And the other 200,000 remained with the big question mark, is this city going to be rebuilt at that spot or not? One has to know this area experienced 1,000 earthquakes a year, minor ones. But still, there is a very shaky place, very active place. I have to say this is a very white, colonialistic perspective. The Maori people say, if you put something into the earth and you don't have the permission, the earth strikes back. Well, these two things are existing there. You may choose which kind of axis or opinion is closer to your own perspective. I'm not judging, I'm just telling you this is out there. And the city made actually quite interesting decisions. They choose a Chinese office based in London to do the master planning for the reconstruction. So you have to understand, Chinese real estate, developer, whatever, architects, urbanists based in London doing the design for Christchurch. Christchurch-London distance is 14,500 kilometers. It's not really around the corner. So in the phase of rebuilding, the curator who was in charge to do the public art program questioned, what can art do in this kind of environment, in this situation? One would have answered maybe nothing. Nothing sustainable, nothing which gives anything add-on to what the people are experiencing right now. And the question was, if there would be a project, what would be the notion or the character of the project? And I wrote a letter to Blair, that's his name, Blair French, and I said to him, if we would create a situation where other people in other cities in the world express their notion of solidarity to that specific area, and we do that, connect that with a symbolic act. For instance, we separate the traffic lights from each different city and make it all move down to Christchurch in the rebuilding phase. We may connect through the symbol of light, people with people. And maybe surprisingly is that you would think, okay, Kurashiki and Sendai, cities who had experienced earthquakes themselves in Japan, would be easy partner for this kind of project because they share an experience. They have grief and sorrow about that situation. But what's about Boston? When I received a letter from Boston, we are going to send a lamppost to Christchurch for your project because we had an earthquake. I was in my hotel room looking up. There is no earthquake happening in Boston. But there was this attack in the finish line for the marathon 6 years ago that was an earthquake kind of experience for the population in Boston because it changed the concept and the notion, the feeling of being in public space. So there were kind of different access point to that idea to join, to participate in that project. This is Sopot, which is in north of Poland. And important is that the lamppost always came with people. There was a delegation or the celebration or whatever is the reason, a birthday, or that was actually the biggest thing I could get, is when in 2015 the All Blacks rugby team made it up to the world champion. They decided not to do the parade in the capital, which is Wellington, but to do it in front of the Peace Solidarity Grid, because they could address in a local situation the people, all the cities that were connected to the city of Christchurch. So that was a kind of a compliment made by the captain of the team. And you know, 65% of the team are Maoris. And that's why this project is called Otahi Christchurch, using and also authors to be part of the game from, and part of the project from Christchurch. Sorry. Okay. Now this is the location of it, and it does what it does. What do lampposts do? They illuminate the street, they illuminate the pedestrian, the walkway, the bicycle way, whatever. And there was also a very interesting situation happening. I got a phone call when the Belgrade lamp from ex-Yugoslavia arrived. You know Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, used to be the capital of Yugoslavia. And the lamppost was so weak and almost broken that the city council couldn't put it up, because you have to meet the health and security standards of the country where you bring the lamp in. You just cannot just put it up because you want to put it up. And I asked them just to do as much as needed to bring it up and to show the lack of elegance, the lack of, how to say that, beautiness, because it had its own beautiness, but it was rotten, it was scratched and everything. Because it also shows the status quo after the Balkan War. Because this was the lamp they could spend. This was the sources they had. It was nothing on stock which looked beautiful or nice to represent the city in the, let's say, in the gloom of representing the city pride. It's about the status quo. So it's also important to see that being transformed or transferred through this project. So this is the last one. I should meet the timing, at least. Sorry for maybe running over time. Les Fleurs du Mal, Flowers for Mal. Actually, it has a German subtitle, Blumen für Mal, but I think you should know at least what it is. It goes back to Charles Baudelaire, who in 1853 published this book, Les Fleurs du Mal. You know what that means, right? Okay, the flowers of the evil. Okay. And you know why it was put on censorship in that time? Because the poems were giving an insight in the 19th century to, let's say, an open soul, to a spirit, to a notion which was insecure if this person should live or not, should die, or it has components of erotic and components of a way of expression. People were not used to that. And Queen Victoria in England, she was very strict in her notion that she has a very anti-sexual and anti-erotic appeal. So it was even transported to France, and that's why this book has been put on the black, you say that blacklist? Okay, it was banned and censored, and it was reprinted years after. So in the city of Mal, I was establishing an idea which has been introduced by Joseph Beuys. As Walid and I walked this Cooper Union today, we saw a big chalkboard, and people were making fun out of the word boys, like boys for men, and boys as Joseph Beuys. And we documented that. It was on the 5th floor, am I right? 6th floor, okay. Okay. And I added something to it as well. Okay. What you're looking at is an artist who had been teaching at the art academy. Then he had been thrown out from the academy because he was accepting every student. There was no limitation. There was no selection process. Everyone who was coming to Joseph Beuys was invited to study with him, since the academy decided not to keep on going. He founded his own university, FIU, Free International University. It still exists as an idea. Why are you laughing? Sounds like a dream, right? Yeah, I mean, he had full class. Always 50 minimum people sitting in a classroom. You could cut the air, one would say, right? It was very, I never attended his classes, but I had different other occasions to meet him. Different story. But where you're looking at is Joseph Beuys in conversation, and that's, practically speaking, 59% of his work, speaking to people. And here it says, we don't do it without the rose. This rose is called Rose for Democracy, simply because this is something you have, and you have to maintain, and you have to take care. If the rose has no water, it doesn't work. If the rose is in a status quo, which is not smelling anymore or smelling bad, you have to replace it. So democracy is something you can have, but also you have to work for it. And so all the conversations was kind of this, under this umbrella. A friend of mine became director, Georg Elben, of a small museum in a very small city in the northern part of the Rusty Belt of Germany. When he was appointed, he told me that he has in total 20,000, not 200,000, not 2 million, budget for a year to make exhibition program. I don't have to tell you that is, I would call it nothing. I mean, if you have to run an institution, it's nothing. So I said, okay, I make a gift. I will give you a work, Les Fleurs du Mal, which comes with this lit up sign at the city hall, where all the wedding people are just walking down the stairs, and there's also political decisions in that neighborhood of the city of Marl. The name of the city is Marl. So when we put up Les Fleurs du Mal, people were sitting there looking at it and saying, we are so poor, we don't even have the money to put an R. Yes, that's true. Because they didn't know who is Charles Baudelaire, what's about the flowers of the evil. And so we started really from zero. And not to forget, you see this, out of this material, this is concrete, I created this vase. The vase became a container of kind of a seismograph to measure the participation of the people. So people crossing this place and bringing flowers. This is a class from a school. They team up and meet and bring flowers to the vase. And this is a professor of philosophy. He's traveling every 2 months, 600 kilometers by train to put flowers there. Why he's doing that? Because he cannot put himself onto the ground and repair the street, as you may do it, or the playground, where the city is under, how you say that, Chapter 11. It's under control. Excuse me? Yeah, it's bankrupt. It's bankrupt, but they still have money, but there's so little they have to, it's under control. So whatever they need to spend money for, they need to make a lot of paperwork happening. And there's no money for art, as I mentioned before. So this person, Bernhard Waldenfels, is contributing to that in the sense of the idea. So it's easier to put flowers in there and to say, I'm ready to do something, to take on some mission, as just looking and pointing the finger to city government and say, someone should do that, someone should clean that up, someone should repair that, knowing this is not going to happen in the next 10 years. What is the alternative of this? Doing nothing or doing a step in between? Les Fleurs du Mal, I would say, is a small step in between. It's creating a debate about what can be done in public space, what should be done, and what is my contribution. at least I could put a flower in there. After the wedding, I don't know if this is also an American custom, people throw the flowers backwards and someone has to grab it and gets married next. I got it 5 times, but I only married once. Anyway, I always love to do that. But the secret is, people are not throwing it backwards. People are putting it into the vase and creating something which is commune. It's for the community. It's a social act. I know it's little. I'm not saying this is going to save the world, but what it did is, it is creating a DIY process. I can say that because I know it. Since 2012, small initiatives have started. People were gathering and saying, okay, we will repair this part of the street. We do something for the bicycle road here. We can repair the playground. You are a cabinet maker and I know how to, I'm a lumber. So they team up and they do something. They paint and do all these little things. And that's because this becomes a spot where people speak out. Like a little stage, you can also convey ideas. So this is a political statement about, something, someone put it up there for a couple of days. And this is the double negative effect. If there is no vase and just a rotten city hall, and there's no budget and there's bankruptcy, you just can easily turn away because it's a lost situation. But if the vase is empty, it reminds you there's something to be done now and quickly. It can be done without any kind of obstacle. It's not limited to your own budget. Most of the people can grab some flowers somewhere and put it there. And the flower, as I said, is just a symbol, as boys use that, to say, this is, we take care. We look at each other, we take care. And that's the situation, how it looks in the night. I have to say, especially when I'm in this situation, presenting the work, or whatever, I always think it's wonderful. I can do the book, I found money and worked with the publisher. I found all the authors, and we made it. I think we did a kind of a accomplishment to the idea. But the problem is, this book is on sale. And this book costs, let's say, $40. All the people I have been working in Mal, no one has budget to buy the book. This is for you to look at. Just let it tour. So what is the result of this observation? To find extra money. Misanthropic money again, very little budget. And reprint the book. Completely in black and white, contains everything without color plates, and make it not on thick but easier paper, and make 500 copies for free to distribute it on the side. And people could take a copy and be participating and be reconnected to the idea. It's very important. And you think, wow, it's a waste of time. People don't read this. Not true. I'm still going there. I'm visiting the city. I'm still speaking to people there. And they know more than I know because they are now actors. And I think this is kind of an important notion, that you don't lose the people in the process. Because they were participating, they were contributing, and then they were being neglected in a way that they were not part of the social level. They could go to libraries, or they attempted to go to museums or to bookstores and buy books. Those free copies have been gone in 4 hours, completely gone. The museum, I think, have 2 copies, and I have 3 in my documentation file. That's it. And I think that is the real success of this kind of back and forth movement, because we were not speaking to all of the people in the first place, but it was an ongoing process. And I'm glad I could introduce you to this kind of notion. Thank you for your attention.